Welcome to the midweek edition of your Breakfast Show on Leadership Television inside Nigeria. My name is Winifred Ugbebo, your host on the program. And on today's show, we are looking at what the newspapers are saying, including Nigeria's most influential newspaper, Leadership. Let's go to our lineup and begin off with Leadership newspaper, as well as other papers we have on our lineup. Papers like Vanguard newspaper, Blueprint, I mentioned earlier, Vanguard newspaper. I mentioned the Punch, the Daily Times, and of course, Daily Sun newspapers, all for review on today's show. Let's start with Leadership, as we normally do on the program. And of course, today's leading story says 2027, we won't endorse any presidential candidates coming from Arewa leaders. That story continues on page 4 of Leadership. This year is 2026, and later in the year, campaigns for various political positions, will flag off in the country for the 2027 election. Let's take some excerpts from that leading story today in Leadership. 2027, we won't endorse any presidential candidate, Arewa leaders. We head up to page 4 of the paper. The paper's Northern Socio-Cultural Organization, Arewa Consultative Forum, ACF, has disclosed it will not endorse any candidate in the 2027 presidential election. It, however, said it would interview the presidential hopefuls in the next 6 months to ascertain their plans for the region. Speaking exclusively with Leadership in Kaduna, ACF National Publicity Secretary, Professor T.A. Muhammad Baba, said the presidential hopefuls will be asked to disclose plans on how they intend to tackle the challenges of insecurity and poverty in the northern region. Pending the conduct of primary elections in political parties, some of the leading presidential hopefuls are President Bola Tinubu, former Vice President Atiku Abubakar, former Anambra State Governor Peter Obi, former Rivers State Governor Chibuike Amechi, Benga Olawekpo Hashim, and Adewole Adebayo, who have indicated interest to contest the nation's top seat in 2027. Although the Apex regional body said it will not endorse any candidate in 2027, it had endorsed President Muhammadu Buhari of the All Progressives Congress APC against Atiku of the People's Democratic Party PDP in 2019. The forum did not disclose a candidate in the 2015 election between then incumbent President Goodluck Jonathan and Buhari as APC's candidate. The forum also did not endorse a presidential candidate in 2023, which had Bola Tinubu of the APC, Atiku of the PDP, Peter Obi of the Labour Party, and Rabiu Musa Kwankwaso of the New Nigeria People's Party, NNPP, as top contenders. We just took some excerpts from today's leading story on Leadership's newspaper, which is 2027, we won't endorse any presidential candidates coming from Arewa leaders. We go over to continue with the headline stories on Leadership newspaper. We have 1,119 Lassa fever cases, 206 deaths recorded in 2025 coming from this center, taking stock of the healthcare last year in the country. That Nigeria had 1,119 Lassa fever cases, 206 deaths recorded in 2025, and that story continues on page 31 of the paper. And on the business boss of Leadership this Wednesday, Nigeria has cleared final barriers to African Continental Free Trade Area, coming from the minister. We'll also take some excerpts from that business news. It says Nigeria has removed the remaining legal and policy obstacles to trading under the preferential terms of the African Continental Free Trade Area, AFCFTA, after the federal government gazetted key instruments required to activate the agreement. The Minister of Industry, Trade and Investment, Dr. Jumoke Oduwole, has said, speaking at the presentation of the Nigerian AFCFTA Achievements Report 2025, Oduwole said the country had completed AFCFTA obligations covering trade in goods, trade in services, and digital trade, effectively positioning Nigerian businesses to access preferential treatment across African markets. In quotes, Nigeria is fully prepared to trade within Africa under the preferential terms of the AFCFTA, Oduwole said, adding that the Ministry of Industry, Trade and Investment had taken deliberate steps to equip Nigerian firms to compete in the continental market. These are excerpts from the business leading story today on Leadership newspaper. Nigeria has cleared final barriers to African continental free trade area. And of course, that is a cherry news because it's is something that has been, the challenges has persisted over the years. And Nigeria can continue to enjoy the benefits of trading within the continental area. Still on the cover of Leadership, resident doctors speak holes in federal government's claim, insist on January 12 strike. Resident doctors speak holes in federal government's claim, insist on January 12 strike. That story is on page 16 of Leadership. Defection or betrayal, Shekarau Defense Governor Yusuf Force Kwankwanso stand. That story continues on page 8. Tinubu appoints first female Director General of Nigerian Law School. Congratulations to the women folk. Congratulations. Tinubu appoints first female Director General of Nigerian Law School. And in sports, Nigeria to clash with Algeria in AFCON quarter-final match. That story is on page 39 of Leadership. Residents, parishioners evacuate Niger communities over attacks. And that takes us to the stories about the masthead of Leadership. Turaki upbeat as Jonathan meets People's Democratic Party officials. Turaki is the chairman of People's Democratic Party, maybe a faction of it. 5.36 million electricity customers remain unmetered, says regulator. And that story is on page 26 of Leadership newspaper. We move to page 3 of Leadership, where we have our stand. Today's stand is on release of abducted school children, not enough. Release of abducted school children, not enough. Today's stand in Leadership. From today's stand, we move briskly to the cover, to the back page of Leadership, where we have Wednesday column with Olufunke Baruwa, and today she's writing on what 2026 is already revealing about our world. Of course, it's something you have to find out what 2026 is revealing about. Of course, we have a familiar part every year, especially as the year wants to a close. You have people setting agendas, having New Year resolutions, and or whatnot. And today's column is highlighting what 2026 is revealing about our world. It has renewed commitment to international law, diplomacy, mutual restraint, and equitable global governance. The fault lines between power and vulnerability, particularly in resource-rich regions, will continue to widen with consequences that extend far beyond national borders. And before we leave that back page column, let's see Ghana must go. Or the new health part to Nigerians: eating until you are full, unhealthy. So in other words, don't eat till your stomach is burdened. And Ghana must go replied, eating what? What actually? Well, you have to find out what you eat, and that makes it, what you eat in food that makes it so unhealthy. It's on this note we conclude review of Leadership newspaper this Wednesday. For more, don't forget to log into the website of Leadership, www.leadership.ng. We move ahead to the next paper we have on our lineup, and that is the punching story today. Says power drain, electricity subsidy nears 2 trillion naira yearly. Power drain, electricity subsidy nears 2 trillion naira yearly. Consumers pay 1.13 trillion naira for power in 6 months amid outages. Rising electricity subsidy sparks fresh fears. Leading story today on the Punch newspaper: power drain, electricity subsidy nears 2 trillion naira yearly. We have the picture of former President Jonathan with PDP chairman yesterday. While the story says 2027, Jonathan pledged active role in PDP, says Turaki, during the former president's visit to the PDP headquarters yesterday in Abuja. APT poll. Opposition parties threaten boycott over PDP exclusion. GNI fire. 3 siblings burned to death for burial January 14. That is a sad one. Banditry. Police free 6 vigilantes arrested by army. And beside the masthead of the Punch, VIP protection crisis. NSCDC moves to recruit 30,000 officials. And above the masthead of the Punch, ADC tickets. Atiku rejects call to step down, blast Tinubu. IG deploys newly promoted DIG, 17 CPs, that is Commissioner of Police. Recapitalization hurdle. Pension firms hunt for 277 billion naira lifeline. And that concludes review of front headline stories on Punch newspaper this Wednesday. For more, log into the website of Punch newspaper. We move ahead to the next paper we have on our lineup this Wednesday, and that is Vanguard. Vanguard says terrorists on rampage in Kwara, Katsina, Kaduna, many abducted. Demand 300 million naira ransom for 7 abducted in Kwara. Kidnap photojournalists in Kaduna, bloodbath averted. 3 IEDs uncovered in Mashegu local government area of Niger State. These are kickers to the leading story on today's Vanguard. Terrorists on rampage in Kwara, Katsina, Kaduna, many abducted. Still on Vanguard, stop justifying violence. Catholic pontiff tests political leaders. We have the picture of the Chief of Army Staff, COAS, Lieutenant General Waidu Shaibu, and former military President General Ibrahim Babangida. They were courtesy visit by the COAS to General Babangida in Minna, Niger State yesterday. Stop justifying violence. Catholic pontiff tests political leaders. Oyo suspense monarch over illegal mining. The second leading story on Vanguard newspaper is still a developing story. Is on the Rivers crisis. He said you can't cry foul now. Turaki's PDP blast APC over Wiki. Wiki's faction gives APC scribe 48 hours to apologize. And establishing a world-class varsity coming from Afe Babalola SAN. Serious visit IBB Abdusalami. Governor Bago promises enhanced security. 2025 AFCON is Super Eagles Algeria in quarterfinals. And we move to the masthead of Vanguard. 5.36 million electricity customers remain without meters, coming from NEROC. Is also a business cover story on leadership this Wednesday. 5.36 million electricity customers remain without meters, coming from NEC. U.S. operation in Venezuela undermined international law. UN, NIA, foreign policy experts slam U.S. strike, Maduro's capture. Nigeria's democracy facing existential threats, coming from Atiku. And lastly, on the cover of Vanguard this Wednesday, probe police clear sees vigilantes in Kwara. For more, don't forget to log into the website of Vanguard newspaper. We move ahead to the next paper we have on our lineup, and that is the Daily Times. Daily Times is leading with ex-President Jonathan promises PDP leaders active role in 2027. Just like other papers before it, we also have the picture of former President Goodluck Jonathan, surrounded by the leadership of PDP yesterday. Actually, it was the leadership of PDP that paid the former president courtesy visit in his Abuja residence. Atiku says Nigeria's democracy under siege as the alleged opposition faces existential threat, coming from former Vice President Abubakar Atiku. That is the second leading story today on the Daily Times newspaper. Police journalists, others abducted in Kaduna community. And that takes us to the stories about the masthead of the Daily Times. Oyo government suspends traditional ruler over illegal mining activities. And lastly, on the cover of the Daily Times, Nigeria's air travel rebounds as international passenger traffic hits 4.33 million. And of course, this is coming from a country that they are saying that there's economic depression. It's not stopping people from traveling. It's not stopping from traveling out of the country. Nigeria's air travel rebounds as international passenger traffic hits 4.33 million. It's on that note we conclude review of the Daily Times newspaper this Wednesday. For more, don't forget to log in to the website of the Daily Times. We head up to the last paper we have on our lineup this Wednesday, and that is Blueprint newspaper. Blueprint is us still talking about unmetered Nigerians. That is the leading story today. It says Discos collected 570.25 billion naira of 706.61 billion naira electricity debt in third quarter 2025, coming from NERC, that is NEC. 228,614 meters installed. Eko Ikeja didn't meet target. Kicker to that leading story on today's Blueprint newspaper. Discos collected 570.25 billion naira of 706.61 billion naira electricity debt in third quarter 2025. This deferred with NNPP mandate like you did to PDP. Shekarau test Kwankwanso is getting hotter by the day. Industry leader begins grassroots mobilization. Of course, it's no longer news that the Kano State Governor Yusuf, is on his way out of NNPP and is going to APC. Of course, he's not sitting well with his leader and his mentor, Kwankwanso, who told him to step down and give back the mandate, that his mandate belongs to NNPP. So he replied, the former governor of the state, Shekarau, told Kwankwanso that Governor Yusuf can defer with NNPP mandate like he, Kwankwanso, did to PDP when he defected to APC as governor of Kano State. One thing of the just figures key the US operation. Oh, we can't see much of that. However, still on Blueprint, COAS visits IBB, Abdusalami Bago assures enhanced security. We also have the picture of the COAS in visit with the former military heads of state of Nigeria. We can see that of IBB, and Abdusalami is gracing the cover of Blueprint newspaper this Wednesday. Villagers discover explosive device in Niger. And just beneath the masthead of Blueprint 2027, Plateau will deliver 1 million votes for Tinubu coming from Yiwatda, that is the APC national chairman. And business news, Household Co says First Bank has met 500 billion naira capital requirement. That was one of the leading stories on Monday's leadership newspaper edition, when he said that 19 banks has actually met the capital requirement threshold for recapitalization. And lastly, on the cover of Blueprint Sports, Reps urge focus as Super Eagles set for Marrakesh. That also concludes the review of front headline stories on Blueprint newspaper this Wednesday. For more, log into the website of Blueprint newspaper, www.blueprint.ng. It's also on that note we conclude today's Inside Nigeria, where we reviewed some national newspapers with some trending stories. Don't forget to log into the website of Leadership, and don't also forget to follow us on all our social media handles for more news and news on the second. It's on that note to draw the curtain. Don't forget to join us tomorrow for another fresh edition of the program. My name is Winifred Webo. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for watching. For sponsorship and advert placements, please contact 08036886158. Last Word Leadership Podcast Studio.